Yeah, bro. Good morning.
Hey, Anbar, good morning. How are you doing this Saturday? Cool. So, shall we start?
Yes.
Cool. So, as part of our series on GRPC, this is the second session we are discussing. So, last session we have discussed quite a few theory on GRPC and what is GRPC, and we just had a quick comparison, like who is winning the race. Like we have the REST APIs, we have GRPC, we have GraphQL, we have webhooks, we have different technologies, we have SignalR. So we saw that each has got its own advantage and its own use cases when to use it. So we have briefly seen that slide, and then we have seen what is protobuf file and how to write protobuf and how to expose a service, how to write those RPC service, and how to write messages. And messages is simple class which is used to transfer the data in and data out. So that's what we have seen. And if you let me share my screen real quick. So if you see from the coding perspective, we have created this GRPC server as well as GRPC server as well as GRPC client in two different projects in a single solution. And if you see that we had everything related to the GRPC server in one project, and one was client, and we didn't have any of app settings or something. We had everything written inside this main method. So we thought to take this a little bit further in today's session. So what we are going to see in today's session. So we are going to improvise this server code to move the pieces into different layers or different projects, and all those 4 projects makes up a server component. So what happens is if there is a change, we are reducing the impact on the overall solution. So the change will be to a particular layer, and it might, if it is a breaking change, it might impact the immediate layer but not other layers. So that's what we are trying to do today, and also improvise the existing console client to move some of the pieces to the app settings, the configuration, and use it. And then we'll create a Windows Form client, and then we'll create a worker processing client, and also we'll work on a ASP.NET Web API client. So we have quite a few things piled up today. So we need to let's start making our hands dirty. So let me show that the completed solution and what we are going to create. So this is how we will create. So we are transitioning from this mode where we had everything in a single server to the other mode where we have different layers. So we have moved all those projects or the components or classes which are related to a separate layer or a project, so that we'll have focused on which layer we need to work and why do we need to make a change. Everything will be pretty much clear. And let's start then. So I just created a basic project structure. So it has nothing inside that. If you come and see that, there's nothing in this. It's just empty GRPC service which has got a hello world of GRPC, which we have already seen. And also if you see that application core is empty project, it is a .NET standard 2.0, and the business logic layer or the data access layer. So it has got nothing inside that. So let's take real 5 minutes time to rebuild the same thing, whatever we have built here. Let's rebuild the same and then start improvising. Then we will see the advantage, what improvements we are going to see. Okay, just give me 2 minutes time. So I will quickly go and move some of the pieces from our old thing to here. so that we can see those differences. And then I will go and get this guy Protos, the college API, inside the Protos, and we'll move the service also, the GRPC service. So then we'll start improvising it. First, let's make it work the way it was previously. Okay, let me come back to this. So if, well, I'll minimize rest of the projects so that we'll get extra space. And let me go quickly see this. We have the greeter service, as this is the one which comes by default. So let me fix up the this namespace stuff, so that the namespace, it will not collide. That's what I have created. Let me quickly fix those namespaces. So we fixed some of the namespaces. Let's go and validate is rest of the namespaces are right. So they are also wrong. So let's fix up that too. So that we'll have everything under the same namespace as the project. Just give me 1 minute. I think we are almost there. Let me close this and ensure that that namespace matches. And this is the common which we have seen, that namespace matches. And we have entities, we have professor and student, and we have the persistence layer where we have the GRPC server, it matches, and we have the proto, and that matches, and college service, this guy matches, and this guy matches. Cool then. So looks like we have everything what we need to. The only thing is we need to go grab this NuGet package. So instead I will go and directly steal it from the project itself. So that way we'll be a little bit faster in our movement. Okay. And the next thing is we need to grab this guy and drop it here. I think that's the pretty much. Let's try building this guy real quick. So let me rebuild this guy. This is the same project which we had in the previous session, where we have created a GRPC service. We have baked the business logic as well as the common and entities, the persistent layer, including the DB context, the protos, the service, everything at one place. It's like server Nivarni. Everything has been baked into a single piece. Okay, so let's do the redo the same thing real quick. I mean, we are just stealing pieces of code instead of rebuilding everything from scratch. So that's a good thing. So just I wanted to do this. It's like a refresher for anyone who's joining this, and also for the sake when we move the pieces of this into different layers, then we'll understand, hey, why did we do that? Okay, so that's what is pretty important. And also some of the tech debts which we are which we have left will come and we'll do the cleanup. Okay, so there are some of the tech debts every session we will leave it wantedly, so that once we go and fix it in the future session, we'll understand why did we do that way. Okay, so let me quickly go there, and we'll fix some of the tech debts which we left it in the previous session. So we'll fix all those now as far as possible, and some things which we might need to carry on in future, and we'll fix up there. Okay, startup service. Okay, I think we are almost done. Let me rebuild this guy. So we took a couple minutes to quickly rebuild this gRPC server, and we missed one piece, that's app configuration. Rest of the things all we hooked it up. The only piece is this the connection string. So let me steal that piece and drop it here. Okay, so I think all is well. Cool. So I think we are good to go. So let me start this guy, and we are using the same Azure Data Studio, which we used it in our previous session. Let's hold on for the server to spin, and there are only a couple of files which we need to steal. Okay, it's all good. The server is running, and we can come and see that there are no records in the data store, either in the professor, and address book is a new table which we are introducing in this session, because it has got a use case to use the worker service to continuously drop the records into this table. Okay, we'll come and revisit that in a moment. So let me close this guy and quickly go to this console client, and quickly steal those NuGet packages which has to be dropped in this. So I'm going here and dropping those NuGets, as well as let me fix up. It's coming with .NET 5, which we will do it in future version. But at this point of time, we'll stick to .NET 3.1. In future sessions, we'll do it, some of those in .NET 5. So now it is in preview mode. We can do one or two in our coming sessions. Then we can quickly compare how we were able to do it in .NET 3.x and how we are doing in .NET 5. So we are saying client. So that's done pretty much. And all we need to do is copy paste the class file, the program.cs. That's it. We are there. Then we can start our journey towards the improvisation. Okay, we are almost there. So let's fix up the squigglies. Bring in the client and bring in the college service, and this is for the Google timestamp, and this one is using static system.console. Okay, perfect. So we have everything ready. So we'll spend 1 minute time to execute the server as well as to execute the client, and let's see it drops a record inside this professors table, and then from there we can start working on this. Okay, I'm starting the server, gRPC server. So this service, it's running. So we can quickly drop a debugger point here, and I am starting this client. So it's coming here, and I did a continue. So you can come and quickly see that it was able to drop a record, and we got a response back with this 841A There's a new record which got created, and we are seeing that 841A. Okay, so this was the state of where we were previously, and today we reached it real quick. So now let's spend one quick minute to understand some of the things. Now let's assume that the gRPC server is running on a different port with a different FQDN. So in that case, we need to come and modify this. So it makes more sense to move this piece into the configuration. And here, this one method is doing a lot of pieces. It's creating those client, and it's creating the record, and it's calling the gRPC service. So multiple things are being done. So let's clean up this after working on the server. Okay, and now we can focus on this gRPC server. In this gRPC server, we have a lot of concerns mixed up in this project. So we are working on the protos and working on the implementation of those gRPC service. That's one concern. And another concern is we are working on that business logic layer here, and we have some common and entities that's also hanging around. And we have the persistence layer where we work with the DB context and the data access layer. So technically, this guy data access layer uses the DB context. So that's what is happening. So we have mixed up all of those concerns in a single project. So let's see if we can improvise this one. Okay, so let's start with start moving some of the pieces, and then so I'll close one of those Visual Studio just as a comparison point. I just kept it. So from there, the desired state is we will reach this state where we will have multiple projects belonging to a single component or a server. Okay, I'm just closing that, the old version. Anyway, we have seen it now. So here we have everything mixed up. Okay, so let's start building on this guy. How do we start creating? So first, let's focus on something called as application core. So let's come back to the slides. Okay, the slides are the same. This is session 2 of 10. So here, what do we do is we build a gRPC server, gRPC service with layered projects, and then we'll create 4 types of clients, everything in .NET Core, 4 different kinds. We'll work on console, we'll work on Windows, we'll work on worker service, and we'll work on web API. All 4 will be acting as a clients for this gRPC service, which we exposed. And today's session 2, and sessions will be weekly and purely hands-on. And we'll have a parking lots, and some of the concepts will revisit again and again. And there are multiple ways to do, and we are doing in one of the way. The focus is more towards the concepts. Okay, so I'm a still learner. I like to learn new technologies. Thanks. So we are using this Visual Studio 2019 Professional, Azure Studio, and SQL Server. And the stack is, this gRPC stack and ASP.NET Core. So here is what we are going to improvise. So if you see our project where we have everything in one particular solution. Now that one particular solution we are going to move into different layers. So let's focus on the application core. So what does this application core means? So anything which rest of the projects are using. So the core concerns everything. We'll move it here. Like we have entities, we have interfaces, we have constants and exception handlings and everything will come in future. But as of now, we move these three pieces here. So from this application core, we'll use those. If you see those interfaces will be used by both the business logic layer as well as the data access layer. Okay, some constants will use it in the gRPC server project, and the entities also we use it in all the other projects. So the advantage is, if you see that application core project, it has got constants, entities, and interfaces. And if you see the gRPC server, that purely focuses on building and exposing the gRPC service. So it contains only the proto file, it contains the implementation, it contains the application configuration, and startup and dependency injection. And if you see the business logic layer, it purely contains the business logic layer. And if you see the DAL layer, it purely has got the DB context and the data access layer. So one guy is focusing on one particular area. You're not mixing the concerns, right? So let's start building this guy real quick. And start building this guy right here. So the first thing is, what we need is we need to have those entities, constants, and interfaces. So just to speed up the process, I'll be stealing pieces of code and copying it here, and then we'll start fixing this, right? So I'll drop it here, and we'll come back, and we'll see this, right? So I'm going to delete this extra class which we are not going to use. Now let's see, what do we have? We have one file, constants, and that constants has got a clear cut differentiation. And here is what we are organizing all those constants which we use across, and also we are having those subclasses there. So when instead of mixing all those constants in one single file, we are still maintaining one single file, but we are subclassing it. That means these constants belongs for one functionality. Like if you see the connection string, that belongs to one functionality. In future, in next session, we'll be working on the Redis cache. At the time, from the data store perspective, we are talking to the SQL DB as well as to the Redis cache. So those two will go into one block, and for address constant, it will come in another block. So like that, we'll have multiple constants in a place. Okay. And if you see that we have the professor class, and that has got here. And let me install the latest version. Okay, the professor class is there, and similarly we have the student, and address is the one which we'll discuss in future. Like right now we'll park it. Okay, the student is also the one which we have seen previously. And here let's concentrate on only two things. Here we are exposing one interface, we calling it as iProfessor business logic layer, and we have one interface called iProfessor data access layer. So we have only these three items. So the application core concerns are only these things. Anything you want from the constants or entities or from the interfaces, this guy is going to provide us, right? So that's the good thing. So let's come back here, and let's start deleting some of the pieces. Okay. So this is the connection string. At this point of time we have it. Okay. So just to not to do too much of breaking change, I'm going to expose this here, so that even though we start deleting the files, we'll not see those breaking changes. Okay, so this is the constant file which we already have it in our gRPC server. So I'm going to delete this one. Okay, so this is how we will start improvising. Okay, we deleted that, and where are we using that constant? The constant is being used here at this place. So it's not able to find that constant. Okay, we do a squiggly, and we are telling that go refer the application core. So this guy go and refer the application core. Now if you see that the constant, we have removed it from here, right? So we did one improvement. Okay, the next piece of improvement what we will do is we have this professor and student class here. Okay, so let me go ahead and delete this guy also. So we'll delete this guy, and the moment you delete, so there will be squigglies all over. Okay, let's go and start fixing that. So in a moment we are going to delete this guy also, but let's start fix it. Slowly we'll improvise. So we say that I'm gonna bring in this and remove the unused entities, and let's go to the DB context, and you see this is coming in from these entities, and where the GRPC server, inside that we had an entity folder which is not a valid path. Now I am nuking all those things, and coming back to this this DAL, again we'll see those red squigglies, and this path is invalid because we have removed those files, so those are invalid. So we have fixed the business logic layer, the persistence, and the data. So let's come back to the GRPC service over here, and we are seeing some of those squigglies. Let's remove that, and here we need it. So let's bring in the new namespace from the project. So that fixed this issue, and this doesn't have anything for sure. And startup is the guy. We'll fix some of the squigglies. I think we fixed it everything. So let's rebuild the solution. For every change we do, we'll come back, revisit, and we'll fix up those problems. Okay, so slowly we'll improvise this step by step. Okay, cool. So that means everything, our project is in a compilable state. So we have used two things, constants and entities, and we didn't do anything from the interface perspective. Now, if you still see that we are exposing this protos and implementation of this GRPC service, but still this business logic layer and the data access layer, everything is coming and disturbing us. Our concentration is gone. So what do we do is next thing we'll go and fix up the data access layer. Okay, so first let's go here and bring in these pieces, drop it here, and let's start fixing that. So I'm going here and dropping this guy, and let me come back and fix it. Here is the data access layer, correct. So let me delete this guy, we don't need it, and let's quickly look what do we have here. So the first thing is persistence. We have the DB context here, and DB context, we need to bring in this entity framework. So let me go steal those things instead of reopening this NuGet package and spending some time. I feel to do this way, which is a bit faster. Okay, so that goes and brings in the NuGet package. Okay, so let's wait on that. Okay, the NuGet package is fixed, and now this guy asks for the professor's table. So the professor's table is coming in from the application core. So I just added those references. Now it fixed this squigglies here, and let's come and see what we are doing in the professor DAL. Again, in the professor DAL, we have only one method where we are writing some log statements, and whatever the professor input which we are receiving, we are dropping it into the professor's table, saving the changes, and returning this professor. And inside this DB context, it's a plain old the DB context whatever we used previously, and that has got 3 DB sets. And we are concerned today only with professors and address. We'll revisit rest in future. Okay, so that's done. And the next thing we need to target is a business logic layer. So let's take some of those items from the business logic layer and drop it here. So that's where we dropped it. And let's revisit this guy here. And I'm going to nuke this. We are not going to use it. And you can see this here, the business logic layer. It is asking for, if you focus on this one, it is using the interface which we have defined it here in the application core. Similarly, if you come and see this, the business logic layer, here also we are grabbing this interface from the application core. Okay, and we need some logger statements. Just hold on, I need to grab this. Okay. Drop this. Okay, so once again, we have grabbed it. Install this, the logger. For this logger, just a moment, let it grab that, and all the squigglies are gone. Okay, cool. So let me close everything, and again we'll see what did we do. So we have defined this application core where we expose this constants, entities, and interfaces. And then we have 2 more projects. We are calling it as business logic layer and the data access layer. And in the data access layer, we have the DB context where we are talking to the SQL Server. And Professor Dal is another class which talks to this one. And everything is using this dependency injection. Everything is through the dependency injection. And the next thing is we have dropped in this business logic layer. Again, we are accepting or consuming this data layer as a dependency injection, constructor dependency injection. And the GRPC service should use it. Okay, now let's start fixing those things now. If you come and see this in the GRPC service, is we are using the professor. We have the dependency of this one, Professor Bal. So what I will do is I will go ahead and delete this the Professor Bal, and I'm going to delete this persistence also. So we are not worrying about anything of those business logic or the data access layer. Now our focus for this GRPC server is purely from the perspective of the GRPC service. Okay, what prototypes I need, and what implementations I need to expose, and what all those configuration which I need to use, and how do I start up and use all those dependency injections. So that I'm concerned only on those things. So now it's bit more clarity. Okay, there are squigglies which we will fix it in a moment. Okay, now the first thing we can come in here and see this in the previous thing. Let me fix this above squiggly. Let me bring in this Dal, and let's see on this one. Now if you see this in the previous thing where we did the dependency injection, adding this in the container, at the time we use the concrete class instead of interface. So tomorrow if you want to use something else, like imagine a scenario where if we are in debug mode, we need to go and call a class with the stub implementation. And if you are not in debug mode, we should go and call an third-party integration. In that kind of scenario, if we expose an interface and implement those interface to the stub class and the main class, so in that case we can use that. So all the places where we need those classes, we don't need to worry about that implementation classes. We can hook it up here so that automatically we'll get a proper dependency whatever we need it. Okay, so let me go grab that particular statement from here. This is the one. Let's discuss about it in a moment. So we had a tech debt which we mentioned it. Now we are clearing some of the tech debts which we'll carry on, but again we'll revisit and we'll fix up all those things. Okay, application core interface is there, and that fixes this one. And if I come in here, so we need the BAL, and this is coming from the DAL. Okay, serve DAL. Cool. So now what happened? We have it. Professor DAL. Let me remove the squigglies, and we have it here using this DAL. Cool. Okay, so we had it. So I am sorting this. So if you see this one, now it is pretty much clean. So now all we are telling is whoever is asking for a dependency of this I Professor BAL or I Professor DAL, so we can go and inject it properly. So now we are using this concrete class. So imagine in couple months down the line, till now we have created, let's assume this is a stub kind of thing, and after 2 months when we go and implement the real-time third-party integration, in that case what happens is it should be going and talking to the real service instead of this stub. So at that time we can do a branching. So that will definitely help as part of the dependency injection, right? So now let's come back and fix this guy here. So we don't need this the concrete class. Now it should be from the interface. We need to use the interface here. So let me remove that squigglies. Remove that squigglies here. The squigglies are gone. Now I am implementing this interface here, and that's the good thing. Professor BL is there. Rest of the squigglies are gone. Okay, so now let's quickly see the big picture. In a moment, please. What is this package? Why it is troubling us? I think you should bump up this. Let me do a build of this. I think I bumped up to a different version. 1 second. Let me go and check that. I think I would have bumped up this version. Yes, to 3.1.4. I remember that. Last night I did it. It should go. Yep, that fixed those the yellow color dots here. Okay. Let's go and build this entire project to see did we leave any loose ends or did we fix everything. So that shows that we fixed it. Okay, let's take a couple minutes to see how the flow goes. Okay, we'll place the debugger and we'll come and revisit this one. So if you come and see from here, the GRPC service. Now what GRPC service is doing, GRPC service is telling that, hey, I need I Professor BAL, and we are asking this to the GRPC container, service container, and the service container goes and checks that, hey, who is implementing this GRPC, this Professor BAL. So if you come and see this one, we are saying that if someone asks for I Professor Bal, give that guy an object of this Professor Bal. So we come and see that what is Professor Bal. Professor Bal has got a dependency on logger. This comes from the framework, and this is our own made. So again, if someone asks for I Professor Dal, we need to go grab this Dal. So when we come and look into the Dal, it again has got a logger as well as the college DB context. Okay, now what is the dependency for college DB context? It's here. Okay, let's take 1 quick minute to place those debugger points and see that how those constructor injection is working, so that we'll have a clear-cut picture of all those things. Okay, I think last time in our previous session we have seen the service container injection. I mean the hooking up everything inside the service container. Now this time we'll see this one. This time we'll see it. Come on, let's quickly execute this. We placed all those debugger points in all those places, in the GRPC service, in the business logic layer, in the data access layer, and in the DB context, right? So now what we will do is quickly go and execute this console, which we already have. Let's start a new instance, and let me place it here. And this console, I'll drag it here. Now let me click on continue. See this, the call first, it is coming to the DB context, because the dependency injection knows that, okay, which object to be built first. So this is the last man standing in the queue. So it builds this guy, the DB context, and then comes to the DAL. Come to the DAL, and from that DAL it goes to the Professor Bal, and then it goes to the GRPC service. Okay, so then it executes it. So now we can see that pretty much it's all baked into, and we have gone from all-in-one solution to layers project. Okay, so we have seen that. I think I missed it here. I'm sorry, it's my mistake. I missed the 4th debugger point. Okay, so let's do one real quick thing. Instead of playing with that, let me open this one and CMD8, so that we can see some of those things. Instead of wherever we don't need those debuggers, we can go and play around with those consoles, so that we can speed up the time. Let me do a CMD here. Okay, so let me close this. All the windows which I don't need, I'll close it, so that we can focus it properly. Okay, I'm keeping this here, calling it as GRPC Server. Just we know that what is that, and then I'll close this guy. We'll de-execute it, and let's do the client here, so that we know that what is this. Title is GRPC console client. Okay, cool. So let's come back here, and I'll execute this one, the GRPC server. So now we have a debugger points there. Now I can come in here and say .NET run. So when I do a .NET run, this guy goes and invokes the GRPC server. Okay, the moment you invoke, you can see this. We have come to the DB context, and the next layer on top of this is the DAL. You can see this here, the DAL, and the next layer on top is this one, DAL, and the next layer is the GRPC service. So this is what we have seen that. So now we are seeing the advantage also by moving all those code to those layers where it belongs is helping us in multiple ways, because when there is a change, when there is a change, only the immediate layer will get impacted, not all entire project. Now, if you see this one here, we have the DB context, and who depends on this DB context? This guy Dal, and who depends on Dal? This guy Bal, and who depends on this Bal is this guy GRPC Service. So by this, what we are doing is we are minimizing the impact. We are minimizing the impact even there is some change or a breaking change that will be between two parties instead of all parties, right? So that's a good thing. So we have done quite a piece of work here, and I think we have this GRPC service. Okay, I just improvised a little bit from the logging perspective. So let me add those things also here. Let me quickly go grab it and grab this. Okay, do we have this? Okay, let me go grab this guy real quick. GRPC service in its entirety, so that we built it. Only thing is the logging statements were not there. So just to avoid some more the thing, I am bringing in. So remove the squigglies, get it from the protos, and this is the logger. Okay, cool. So there's nothing new. Only thing is the logging statements. Okay, so if you come in here, the GRPC servers .NET run, I run this the server, and again I come back here, and I will let it run this .NET server. Okay, now the GRPC service is running. Now let's do a .NET run on the client, and this guy goes and drops in a record. Let's wait until this guy drops in a record. Now, if you see all those debugging statements, it clearly helps. I just wantedly created a debug here, so we can see the entire flow here. We can see that okay, the request was received by the GRPC service, and this is a class name and this is a method name. Many conventions are there. This is the convention I'm using. Then the control has gone to this one, Professor Bal, request has received, and from there the request received to the DAL. And if you see here at the bottom, so the DAL layer is returning the results. We are saying that returning the results from the DAL layer, and then the BAL layer I have to improve, but at this time I left it. And again, the results has been returning the results from the GRPC service. So now with this, what happens is if there is an issue or something, we can clearly go and see those entry and exit log statements. So if you see this, there is an entry log statement, there is an exit log statement, and if at all there is some critical piece which is happening, we can mark those log statements. And always at this point of time we are using this console logs. Eventually in future session we are going to move to this persistent logs, where we can go and check those logs. But the net the concept itself is we need to have a minimum entry and exit logs. So that means even if you are moving from a different class and different methods, we know that when did we enter this method, when did we exited that method, and how did we go, what is the flow of that. And sometimes what happens is we'll see an entry log, but we will not see an exit log. Or that means it can be broken anywhere. It would have blown here, or it would have blown in here. Okay, so it helps us in investigating and debugging the issues faster, right? So that's the thing. Let's park this guy and let's move and improvise our console app guy. So here, if you see this one, we have incorporated this. Okay, we'll see what slides we have covered. We have covered this guy. We have covered, and we have improvised ourselves, and then we have seen that logging statements, which definitely helps us to understand the flow. how it is flowing between different projects or different classes or different methods, and entry statements, exit statements, and any critical pieces which we are doing. We need to log it, and we'll see this how to improvise the client project. Okay, now let's see that piece, how to improvise this client. Yeah, this is the guy. Now if you come and see this client, we know that it's executing on 5001, HTTPS 5001. Here we are seeing that. So what if it's going to change, and we need to come and every time go and start modifying this. And also here we are seeing that we are focusing on the client creation and also the invocation of those of the GRPC server method. So we are mixing up a lot of concerns in one single method. So let's try to improvise that. Okay, so let me quickly go and grab that piece of the code so that it will be easy for us to again speed up that. I'm here. I'm in the source. Let me go to this console and grab this app settings and this class. Okay, so let me drop it here and we'll see this now. Okay, now if you see that we did small improvements, we'll come and discuss that. The first of the improvement is we have moved that service URL to the configuration file. So any change will be here. Imagine this URL is being used in multiple places. So we don't need to go and change on all those places. Only one place we can change is in this app settings. Okay, and if you see that in this one method, I need to go grab this NuGet package. I'm sure on this one I need to grab this guy NuGet package which is missing. Yes, that's the only guy who's missing. Okay, that NuGet package is missing. Okay, so what else is missing? Right. Okay, cool. So those NuGet packages were missing. Now if you see this one, the client creation, we have moved out of this main method. Now this is the guy who always gives us this client. So what we have exposed a property here, and this property we have exposed is a private variable. And if at all this variable is null, we are going and creating this client and keeping it. And if it is not null, we always return it. This one. That's the first piece. And the second piece is this is an app setting file where we have all the configuration. So let's go grab this guy and open the properties, and we'll create it as a content, and we'll say this always copy. So that goes to the location where this executable is getting created, and that's where it goes and grab. So once that is done, this is the I configuration which loads different configuration. So we are creating this configuration builder, and we are saying that get it from the current directory and add a JSON file. Okay, so what does that mean is, let me rebuild this, and after rebuilding it, let me open up Sky. Just give me a moment, let it compile. Let's take a moment for this guy to finish it. Okay. We opened up these two. That was issue. Okay, so let me rebuild it again. So I opened up those consoles in execution mode. So that was a problem. So now let's build it again. It should build, and once it builds, we'll see this. Okay, now it has built. Now let's go and see. And this bin debug .NET Core, and you can see this one. It is on the same level where we have the executable. So that helps this guy to go and grab this information. So that's what we are loading this configuration app settings. And this is a simple while loop, and we are asking that do you want to create a new one, create a new record, or jump out of this one. And here I just created a sample, a very simple, common or a reusable project, and let's see that guy real quick. So it has got few constants here. So these constants belongs to name generator, and this constant belongs to the address generator, and these constants belongs to the address constant. This is for the another service, GRPC service, which we are going to expose in a moment. Okay, so let me stop this so that we can focus it. I think we are improvising on this one, and next thing we'll see Windows 1. Right. So that's the reusable component which we have developed. And here are a couple of utilities which I have exposed. One thing is this name generator. So you give the length. So it goes and creates some random alphabets, uppercase, lowercase alphabets. Okay. And that uses this consonants and vowels. So it creates some name. And there's one another static class which creates a fictitious address, and how the address will be, it's like this format, like flat number so and some number, some name, apartments, some street in Hyderabad, something like that. Okay, and this is a random number generator. So this is one of the class which I'm using in multiple projects. So that's the next piece is this one. We are creating a new professor, and then it generates some fictitious name, and it generates some random date. What is his date of join? And these are, I'm keeping this as constant. Okay, that means we'll drop in multiple records. Let's see that in action. So let me go check how many records are there. There are 4 records. Let me delete all those records so that we can know that all those records, whatever we are creating, is from this guy. So let's create it here. .NET run. I'm executing this server. Let it run. In the meanwhile, let me go grab. I'm saying that .NET run, and let's see that there are no rows in this database. There are no rows in the database. And now I do a .NET run, and let me keep these two guys side by side, and let this guy go and hit him. We should see creating. Okay, it has created the first record, and let's come and validate that. Okay, it has created a first record. This is the name it generates, and here it has generated 2013. And do you want to create a new professor? I said that I want new. So it created a second record, 652A. So come and see that 652A. It has created some random name, and now the year it randomly generated is 2014. Okay, now I generate one more. Now you can come and see this third one. Now it generated 2015 with some name. Okay, so that's how we have improvised two major things. One is we have improvised the GRPC server, and we have improvised a GRPC client. Okay, so we are progressing, and in the next demo we'll progress little bit more. But if you see from where we started and where we are now, there are very minimum changes. Okay, so if any of those URLs are changing, we don't need to go and change it in the code. All we can do it in the app settings. And if you see that each of the method is mostly focusing on doing one particular thing instead of mixing a lot of concerns. So that's a good progress. And now let's go and create a Windows client. So now we have seen that how to create console client in the last session, and now in this session we have improvised a lot. Instead of having everything in this method, we moved it to different pieces inside this class and using it. And here in this, if you run it through the loop every time it was going through, now we have moved it to this property where it creates once and we use it many times, right? And then we have moved the code to app settings so that any changes will be at this location inside the app settings, instead of we going and trying to modify. If the same URL is being used in multiple places, you don't need to go and modify all those places. Cool then. So let's focus on this Windows Forms. So let me come here and go to this Windows Forms. At this point of time, we don't have anything here. It's just a plain vanilla Windows Forms. And let's see, that's the Windows Forms in .NET Core. Because this GRPC server, we are working in .NET Core. So all those clients, whatever we are developing today, are .NET Core flavor. The console was .NET flavor, Windows Form is .NET flavor, Worker Service is .NET flavor, Web API is .NET flavor, .NET Core. All four clients are of .NET flavor itself. Okay, so it takes some time for the first time to set up all these things. And one of the blip or something is sometimes if you go, you will not find this button here. You will see the rest of the controls in this toolbox, but you will not find this button. So I was looking through Google and I found you need to right mouse click and you need to reset this toolbox 1 or 2 times, then it will start appearing. Okay, most probably a couple times you need to do it. Initially when I came, even I didn't see this button. So just FYI, what pain point I was going through is this one. So someone has already passed through this pain and they overcome. Just right mouse click on this one and reset the toolbar. Cool. Now let's see how to improvise from step to the next step, right? So let's have these two things side by side so that we can focus. I'll keep this guy here, and if you see the console app, we wrote everything. This the client creation, we had it inside the same class as a property. Now slowly we are improvising a little bit more. If you see in this Windows Forms project, we moved it to a separate class itself. So this class has got this GRPC client, and it's exposing that as a method here. So anytime you call this method, it goes and grabs that client and sends it across. And the second piece is the same, that app settings. That's the same one, and a little bit of it's a simple form. Simple form which has got few text boxes and one check box, and we are generating this object and passing it. We'll see that in a moment. Okay, so it has got these things, and again I'm reusing those common things whatever I've created. If you see this, when I'm doing new, I'm generating a random name and assigning it here, and resetting this name and this checkbox value. And at the time of the form initialization, I'm loading this app settings inside this config, and I'm generating the name here. And when I click on a save, what I'm doing is I'm going and grabbing this client. Okay, I'm going and grabbing this client, and then I'm using it here. Okay, so we don't need to go and grab this client every time. We'll improvise that there. It's a good point that now that we are seeing, let's improvise there. From the source, let me go grab this Windows Forms from here and go grab all these guys, app settings, this file, this forms, this forms, this forms, and this program. I'll grab everything and come and drop in inside this working folder, inside this Windows Forms. Let me grab and let's improvise that. Right. So quickly we'll come back here and I'll close everything. I will. Okay, let me close this. I'll close this also. And I don't need this form. Let me delete it. Okay, so we saw this. App settings is a file which will hold the URL, and this client helper is the one which goes and grabs this. I need to get those NuGet packages. Just give me a moment. Grab this NuGet packages. So let me grab this NuGet packages. It's all the process is same. So whatever we have at this point of time, it's just a plain vanilla forms, .NET Core Forms project. We don't have anything, and we need to do the same thing. What did we do it for the console client? We need to do the same to this Windows Forms. There's no difference. Okay. And the next thing is we need to go right mouse click on this and add connected service, and go grab this GRPC. Let me go grab this guy from here. Inside the server, go to the protos and the college API proto and see this. There's a client. I do a finish. That's done. And once that is done, let's come and check this. We are creating this the class, helper class, and then we are inside this forms we have created those text boxes. Let's improvise it a little bit, because every time I click the save button, I don't need to generate this all the time. Okay, let me go grab this the common project so that we'll have the flexibility to use this name generator and other generators which I have it here. Just give me a moment. Looks like it's eating up the CPU. Okay, and now it has given me this. So let me quickly go here and see that I'm returning that call as service client. Come back to this forms and let me expose private, this one. And let me fix this quickly. I use this one and I call this, and let me move this to that initialization. I don't need to do all the time. Every time I click a save button, it doesn't make sense to do it. So grab this guy and further improvisation. Okay, I will grab this guy here and this guy here. Cool. Okay, now it's much cleaner. So whenever the form is initialized, at that time itself we are going and grabbing that that's client, the gRPC client. So we don't need to do it again and again. And then every time you click a save button, you just go and invoke it. Okay, let's see this in action. Now let me go grab the gRPC server here, do .NET run, and let it run. In the meanwhile, let's go and do a cleanup of all those records which we created in the previous exercise. So I go and remove everything and check there are no records. Cool, there are no records at all. The server is running. Now come back to our session here and let's run this. Did we miss anything? Did we miss anything? Yes, I think we missed this guy. It should be the content, and then grab always. So the moment you do, you see this project would have updated. Yep, cool. So I think we are all set to test our second client, gRPC client. So with this, we would have done multiple things. So we have the console client. Now we have a Windows server, Windows form. We have the gRPC server here, and we have the Windows client. I think I will grab this guy here so that we can clearly see what's going on in this gRPC server and this client. So I just created. So I'm saying that this guy is teaching Python also, and let's bump up this guy's salary to 2244.66. And is he a PhD? Yes, he's a PhD. And I do a save, and that guy goes and drops this, and we can. So it's 4F50. So come back here and see this. The record has been created. Now I want a new record for new name, and the Power BI. This guy is going to teach Power BI, and is not a PhD. I'm going to save. See this? It took fraction of second to drop in a record. We didn't even know that it's making a call. In future version, we'll see that how to deploy it to the remote server and do this. But we are building a lot of fundamentals or strong foundation in the sessions, and in future session we'll definitely deploy this to remote virtual machines in Azure, and we'll test it. Okay, shortly, maybe in 2 sessions down the line, we might do that, right? Cool then. So we have tested the second client. So we have tested. Now we have seen 3 different pieces in the mix. The first piece is the gRPC server, and that gRPC server we have created using different layers. And the next thing we have seen the console client, and that we have improvised. And the next thing we have seen as the Windows forms. Okay, now let's come and work on this web API client. Okay, now if you come and see this web API client is a simple plain vanilla hello world web API. It has got nothing new, but let's create it in a moment. Let's take a moment and improvise that guy. Let's see first how is this happening, and then we'll come back and improvise that. Create it as a client. Let it execute. This is the first time. Okay, it works. So let's start building it. So first we'll grab those NuGet packages, and then we'll start improvising. So we go to this web API client, and let me grab all these guys so that it will be easy for us to do. Okay, I grabbed it, and next thing is we need to go. Come on. Okay, it did that. Now let's go grab this connected service. We need a gRPC. I'm going to grab this gRPC, but here if you see the difference between the Windows forms and the console client, there is a small difference we need to observe while we are grabbing this proto. Here it didn't convert into client. But in the case of console as well as Windows Forms, the moment we are trying to grab this proto, it automatically selected it as a client. But as this is a web API, it assumes that it is a server, because that's one of the use case. What we discussed in the first session is where can we fit in this gRPC. So we said that one of the key area where we can fit this guy is when you're doing a communication between a one microservice to other microservice which has been hosted in a single data center or a multi data center. But that's the key use case when you want to communicate between two different microservices. And this is a web API, and it recognizes that, oh, this guy is a web API. Maybe it is going to act as a gRPC server. So that's the reason it is doing. So in our current case, we want this web API to act as a client instead of a server. In the next session, we will do that, where we'll create a web API and we'll add gRPC to that. Instead of taking a new gRPC template, we'll add gRPC to the existing web API, and then that becomes a gRPC server, and some other guy will be a client. And then we'll create a new gRPC server, and this web API will be client. So if you see that from a microservice to microservice communication, this web API acts as a client to the gRPC server, and this web API itself is a gRPC server which some other client will consume. We'll see that in a couple sessions down the line, but let's fix this right now. So we have added it, and then slowly, if you see that there are small improvements which we have to do it, let's do that. I'm adding a models class here. Okay, that's the models class. So let me cut this and paste it here inside this model class, and let's go and fix its namespace. I'll fix its namespace, model class. And the next thing we need to do is come back here and fix this, because it's directly coming and going in a disk and displaying the output. And we need to fix this red squiggly to grab this guy from the models folder. And once that is done, it will not work. Let's execute and let's fail and come back and fix it. Why did we fail? Let's wait for the failure. Let's wait for one more minute. Okay, it failed because we have changed it to API/weather forecast, right? So now it's coming in. So where do we need to go and fix it? So we'll come back to this properties, open up the launch settings and add it here, API/. So API/. So now you go and click on this. It should work because we moved the folder, the class into the models folder, and then we fixed up that routing, and now we fixed it in the properties. All is well. Cool then. So let's go and create a folder called helpers, and let me grab the folder name from here, helpers. Right mouse click on that and add a folder called helpers. Okay, so we already have that file in here, so I'm just grabbing it and pasting it here, and that should be from this namespace. It should not be a separate namespace, it should be this namespace. I'm fixing that in a moment. Okay, I fixed it, and then we need to create a controller, because now that we have this web API, it works, but someone should go talk to this guy, the gRPC server. So we need a separate controller for this. So let's create one controller. We call it as a processes controller. So let's come back here, right mouse click, add a controller, and API, I'm adding an empty controller, and let's give it a minute. Right, so we are creating the processes controller. So just to keep the demo simple, I am grabbing this entire thing from here and dropping it here. Let's come and see what did we do in a moment. So let's see that I configuration, that squiggly is gone, and this iLogger, that squiggly is gone, and the squiggly is gone. So all is well, all the squigglies are gone. So we need this guy from the helpers, and this guy is from the protos. So we got request, response, everything is there. Cool. So let's go through this. What did we do here? So we have created a controller, and we have the logger and configuration because we need to read the service URL, and this is the client, the helper class which we have created here, which is the same one which we have used in the Windows Forms project. And in here, if you see, we are having this logger as well as config as part of the constructor injection. I just moved this guy here so that one time it constructs and it keeps this client ready. And again, I'm writing those log statements, entry and exit, and I'm calling this guy. Once I call this again, inside this gRPC server, we are again writing those log statements, mostly entry and exit, so that we'll be knowing that how the flow went in, right? And I don't think we need to do anything here as part of, because this is just a client, and that we will do it when we are doing the server. When we are creating this web API as a server, at that time we need to do it, but at this point of time we don't see the need of doing it. Okay, and we'll see that it is HTTP post method, and we are having this professor object, and we can come back to this protos folder to check that what is this new professor request. It requests a name, and it asks for the date, time, and it teaches, and it has got a salary, and it has got a PhD. Okay, and how do we test it is through Postman. We have this endpoint, and we have to pass it. Now see this, we are passing the name is the name, and the next thing is date of join is a Google timestamp. We'll come and visit that in a moment. And the next thing is teaches is just a string, and salary is a float, and this is a Boolean. And the next question is, hey Swamy, how do you know that date timestamp you have to give it as an object? So that's a good question. So let's see that, right? So if you go and check this Google timestamp in this one, let's see this here, search for this. Okay, so the class reference, come into this class reference. Okay, a few comments, see this here. So when we assign a value, the two pieces of this timestamp, one piece is seconds and another piece is nanos. Okay, so that is the structure of this one. So it holds, see this, these are the properties. This is a class, it has got those constructor, and it's a class. And there are two important properties. One is nanos and one is second. Okay, so that's how I figured it out, that I need to pass it this way from JSON. If not, it was throwing exception. And how do you know, Swamy, that these values corresponding to what? Okay, for that, what did I do is I went back to the console application. Let's come back to this console application. This is the program which we already used it. And here is where we are creating an object of this class, isn't it, this one? So just drop the debugger here and executed this project for a moment. Okay, I thought of to create a small tool, but I didn't have time. I think for sure in the next week session I'll definitely do a tool so that we can grab those date times. So if you come into this one, go and grab this guy and then do the date of join, and here is what you see. This, if you see this, the date of joining is an object. It shows it, the flower bracket, it's an object. And what it composed of? It composed of two things. One is this nanos and one is this second. So this represents 2017 0530. So we can grab this guy and we can place it in this nanos, and we can grab this guy seconds, and that's all the ticks. I mean, we can do the calculation. It's detailedly described here. How can we calculate and what exactly goes in here, and what is that it will accept. It will accept from this date to this date inclusive, and how the JSON representation should be. It's all in UTC. So those values, that Z and everything, whatever we are seeing in here, it's a must. If you come and see this guy, year, month, date, the time is hours, minutes, seconds, sorry, hours, minutes, second, and this fraction, and Z represents the UTC. Okay, so that's how I was able to grab it, right? So now what do we do is we have, let me close this, whatever it is. Okay, the Windows, the console client, the server is already running. So now let me grab this guy, go to the Windows, the web client, whatever we are working on, come to this professors, and then drop a debugger here. Okay, so let me execute this guy. Okay, let me execute this one. Let me execute this one. Let me execute this, and then it is executing. It is executing it here. Now, if we don't send this, let's see that for a moment, because according to the documentation, if you purely go by the rules of the game, it says that inclusive of these two dates, it should be grabbed. And that structure, if you see this structure in here, yep, if you see this one, so these are the dates. So if I try to pass this, okay, 1970-0101 and 000 UTC. So now I'm trying to pass this as an object. On which port it is running? Oh, today port is different. Okay, the port is different. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, the gRPC URL I forgot. Sorry for that. I had to update this app settings. RPC, let me grab this guy and drop it here and execute it. Let's give it a second for that to spin, and then we'll go. Okay, that's there. Then let's hit this guy. So it says the bad request. So it says that it's not able to convert that. So after a couple of minutes of Google reading, I was able to understand that. Let's remove all the records, previous records. There are only 2. Okay, there are no records. And let me pass this nanos in seconds. Now it came in here. Now I just click on continue and let's see the server here. So server has done it. And 7A414, that's the new record which got created. So 7A414. And this is the same date which we have seen it here. Okay, so this completes the other demo where we did the web API part here. Now let's see this how to create the worker service as a client. Okay, so that's a new thing. So for that we need to do some of the new enhancement. I mean, I just built up a separate story for that. And so what happened is, if I come back here and see this, I just created another table. This table I'm calling it as an address book. So that means every student, they are registering. I mean, just a fictitious scenario. They are registering their address for different purposes, maybe for internal exams, for lab, or for training, or for external exams, or for multiple things. I mean, it's all a fictitious story. So what happened is the use case, something like this. Different users or the students will come and they will enroll themselves. And what happened is, this guy, whoever is sitting on a help desk or front office, he accepts that and he keys in that record, and it goes and drops a message in the queue. And the worker service will read the message from the queue and calls this GRPC service. And 2 sessions down the line we'll do that, but at this point of time, assumption is somewhere this worker service is reading this and dropping in. So that's the piece. Okay, so for that we created it. So I have placed the SQL here in this folder. So this is the address book table script, which is already there. For some reason it's taking time, right? It is there. Now we need to expose we need to expose a new service. So now we just created a layered project server. Now we'll see that how easy it is to create a new gRPC service. So all we need to do is come and drop a proto file here. So let me go and grab the proto file here. See this, how easy the development will be once we have all those separated in different projects. Okay, I'm grabbing it there and drop it into this project. Drop it into this project. Okay, now we have this proto has come, and we need a service here. So we'll go and grab the service from this guy. The service is just a plain vanilla implementation. It's the same to which layer you need to talk. You need to speak only to the business logic layer. You're not going to talk to anyone else. So you can come in and see that the address book, you are talking to the address BLL. Okay, we'll come and fix that in a moment. We'll come and fix that in a moment. Let me comment it for a second, and let me build this guy so that it builds all those things which are needed. We need this address book. So this is the fundamental thing which we should never forget. We will definitely forget, but always come back and revisit. If at all something is not working, it's not able to recognize those gRPC service which you have written and it's not recognizing, and this is the place you need to come and first validate, hey, did I drop this proto properly, and did I write it inside the CS proj so that the tools, the gRPC tools knows that where should it pick up and do this. Okay, let's wait, give it a moment, and oh, I'm sorry, again I'm doing the same mistake. I need to stop this guy. Okay, cool. Now let me rebuild, because that's a separate command line which I'm using it, which is running this server, so that we can focus purely on the clients talking to that server. Cool. So it has built it. So let's come back here and uncomment all these lines, so that there'll be quite a few squigglies, which we will remove that in a moment. And I'm removing this squigglies. I'm going to use this random number generator, and a couple things which we need to focus on this one. Let's come and revisit. That's it. Drop one proto and drop one service. Cool. So what is there in this proto? We are exposing one RPC method. We are calling it as add address. I want a name, student ID, his full address, his enrollment, and enrollment status. Okay. So what is this enrollment? So we'll come back to this. Enrollment is, he's doing an enrollment for what? That's what we are calling it here. So is it for an internal exams, or is it for a lab session, or is he trying to enroll himself for a library usage or for external exams? Okay, so that's the enrollment. And there is something known as enrollment status. So that is specifically for the server to decide whether I'm allowing this, whether the enrollment was success or failure or in pending or rejected. So that concern is for this one. So we will have that constant here. So is it pending, or is it in progress? Is it in rejected, or is it enrolled? Okay, so it's a pretty simple one. We have this address, add address request, and add address response. So while response, we are returning the message as well as the ID. So we are yet to do the console, yet to do the logging from the gRPC perspective. We will see that in future session, 2 sessions down the line. Next session is for something else. We'll see that what's coming in the next session, and then error handling is there. So that's coming in the session 4. This is 2. So those 2 pieces I'm parking it for the future session. So let's go and see what is there in this gRPC service. So again, we are implementing from this abstract class, and these 2 are those dependency injections. And here is this constructor. Constructor is getting injected, and this is one method which we are exposing. So we have the entry and exit log statements, and we are creating a response object, and this is a address object which is getting created. And you see that actually the student ID should be the existing student ID, but at this point of time, this is the one piece of the equation. The second piece is that the service bus queue and another worker processing which drops the message, which reads, is in future session. Maybe in the 5th session we'll do that. So we'll have a full-blown architecture where we have that worker process drops a message in the service bus queue, and this worker service goes, reads that queue and creates it. Okay. At this point of time, I'm hard coding it here, and the name and this request and enrollment is coming, and enrollment status again I'm going and grabbing this array, and from that I'm generating a random number. So 1 to 4, maybe it could be pending, or it could be in process, or enrolled, or rejected. It could be anything. Okay, that's it. So from the development of the gRPC service, because our concern is only this much, so we'll finish off there. So now the next thing what we will do is we need to come and ensure that we have the entities in place, and we have the interfaces in place. So one interface is for business logic layer and one interface is for data access layer. So those two are in place. So that is the concern of app core. Now we come back to the DAL, and the DB context is having this address book, and we are having that DAL address DAL layer, and address DAL layer is talking to DB context, and here also we are having the entry and exit logs, so we know the workflow where it is going, if at all if it is failing somewhere, and we'll make it fail in future. So we'll see all those things. Coming back to the business logic layer, it has got a dependency on address DAL, and I'll improvise this to grab it and write an exit. At this point of time, I'm writing only the entry, and then this guy will come and be called from this service, GRPC service. So I think all is well. It should work. But hold on, we have to do hooking up. So how does we are saying that, hey, give me the address business logic layer. Yes. Who's going to give the container? And did we add this to the container? No, because this container is here, services container, but it is our duty to go and add this. Okay, let's do that piece of hooking here. Let me grab that statement, two statements, and let's hook that up here. So now see this. Now he's saying that someone asks for iAddress BLL, give me address BLL. Someone asks for iAddress DAL, give them DAL, right? So this is an interface and this is a concrete class. And that's it pretty much. So we have developed the GRPC server. And then coming back to the worker processing. So inside this worker processing, we have this worker processing, we have the app settings, and we have program. Okay, let's build this worker processing. What this worker processing does is it executes every 1 second. It executes. Okay, let's see what does it do, and then we'll improvise it. Okay, you can see this every 1 second. You can see 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, it does some job. Right, let's keep it aside and let's create this. I'll grab one by one from here and we'll drop it. Let's create it. We don't need the server. We don't need this web client. We just need this worker processing. So the first thing what we will do is we'll grab this guy, RPC service, and drop it here in this app settings. It's here. Okay. Let me format this document. It's done. Cool. Okay. So do we don't have those nuggets. So let's grab those nuggets. I'm grabbing those nuggets. Let me nuke this off. Right, that's done. And let's give it a moment. Right, that's done. Let's go grab this connected service and add this gRPC. I have already mentioned it. So when you are grabbing this proto, please ensure that the proper type is selected here. Okay, in Web API particularly we have seen that it's not selecting it as client. It is deciding that it is a Web API and it will be a microservice. So it is expecting that gRPC is doing a server. Okay, but in our case we did client. In future we'll do a single web service, Web API, REST Web API acting as a server as well as a client. let's create a use case and work in a couple sessions down the line. We have it in pipeline. Right, we have this and we have the app settings ready. And what we need is we need the helper class. And I'm calling this as this helper. So let's drop this guy into this helpers, a folder. And let me drop this class in here, which will be creating that helper. Right. Now let's quickly go grab this guy and drop in here. Cool. So no squigglies? Yeah, I was expecting squigglies. Right, cool. So let's remove the unwanted one, the GRPC. Oh, we need it. Yes. Okay. That's pretty much our helper class is done. And once the helper class is done, we need to go grab this method from the worker. So let's grab it. Let's discuss once we paste it here. So I'm coming back to the worker. And it does nothing in there. Okay, we dropped it here. So okay, let's fix those squigglies. So I configuration, we need a configuration and address server client, that is from this guy, and this helper is from the helpers. So rest everything got fixed, and this address request is from the protos, and this name generator is from the common client apps common. I'm grabbing that guy. And this is from the constants for the client. Wow, cool. So that is pretty much. So what we are doing here is we have this logger. By default, it comes. So we have injected this configuration, and I'm creating the client here. And that goes and uses this helper class to grab this client. And then the worker process starts, and what we are doing is we are creating an address request. And as I told here, this student ID has to be replaced with the original student ID. It should exist in our records. So that will be 2 or 3 sessions down the line where we do that service bus queue, where this worker process reads the service bus queue. So every time a message gets dropped in the service bus queue, this worker process go grab that message and process it. Okay. Eventually, this is going to come from a service bus queue message 2 or 3 sessions down the line, right? And it's the same. I'm using that common project where I'm generating a name and I'm generating the address. And there's an enrollment types. So why I'm enrolling? I'm enrolling for the internal exams or external exams or a lab session or for the library usage, whatever. And then calling this method, right? I think pretty much that's it. And how I'm generating address is as a simple, this address, full address is one of the constants which I've taken, just fictitious, like flat number, it generates some number and some random string and some random. Okay, this random strings I'm calling it as apartment and this street, right? It's a pretty simple thing. So let's go and kick in the .NET Run. Let's go and kick in the server. Let it start. And okay, let's ensure that there are no rows in the address book. Okay, there are no rows in the address book. And did the server start? Okay, it started. And what we will do is just to ensure that this is not bombarding the database, I'm making it to 5 seconds. Okay, instead of dropping message every. Oh. Why did it start failing? It didn't start. Wait. Hold on. It didn't start. Okay, let's rebuild everything. Looks like we were holding that server for most of the time. Some of the changes which we did it, looks like it didn't pick up. Let's wait for a moment to get this compiled and then we'll execute. Let me grab this guy and start a project and execute it. Okay, good. It's running. So I'll keep this server aside. And now I will go to the worker processing. It's a worker service. Basically, it's similar to the Windows service, but this is a cross-platform guy. And just for the first time, I will place the debugger here. And start this. Okay, there are no rows here for address. And we have the server here running, and we have client here. Okay, it has hit the debugger. So I'll remove the debugger. So continue. So let's see this. Both guys talking to each other. So now you see this, the endpoint, it shows that address server, and add address is the endpoint which we are talking to. Ooh, looks like we missed something. Wow, what did we miss? We missed hooking up. We missed hooking up that in the startup class. So let's see that. Where did we miss it? So in the startup class, we did this hooking, but we forgot to tell that there is a new GRPC server. So this new GRPC server is this guy, address book. So until you hook that up as part of the configure, it will not recognize that just the service exists, because it has to recognize this endpoint. Okay, now let's come back. The debugger it has blown. Let it start. Okay, now the gRPC server has started. Now Windows client is back, and we'll start this guy. Okay, boom. See that? It started the debugging, saying that received the address. Now it has created one address, and it will kick in after next 5 seconds. It creates another one. Now you can come and see that it has created two. It has created one at 50. Okay, 11, 6, 11, and 16. So there should be another record. Okay, so technically what we will do in future session is we'll read this worker service. We'll read it from the service bus queue, and for service bus queue we'll create something else, but that's a future improvements. And that's it from today's demos. So let's quickly recap for a moment. What did we do? Okay, what's coming in also is very important. Okay, now let me start this. So let's quickly recap. We have seen how to create the gRPC server in a layered manner, so that any new changes you bring in will have a minimal impact between one or two layers. I mean the immediate layer, most probably it should be immediate layer. If it is going to multi-layers, that means we did something wrong. We need to improvise on our design. And then we have seen how to write this entry and exit logging statements, a minimum, so that we can do an entire workflow when we are doing a debugging or investigation. and then we have improvised the existing gRPC client so that we moved it to the configuration and everything, and then we saw that how a Windows Forms can act as a gRPC client, and then we have seen that how a worker service, which is similar to the Windows service, how it can act as a gRPC client, and then we have seen that how a REST web API can act as a gRPC service. Now this is a classic example where imagine that in our case, the server project, this is one microservice. If you consider this, number one is one microservice, and number three is another microservice. But what is happening is this three microservice is talking to one microservice. So assume that both has been hosted in some data center, but a client talks to three talks to one. So that's the server to server communication. So this is best suits over there. Okay, so we have seen that piece, and then we have seen how this web API talks, and we specifically focused on the data type of date timestamp, and we have seen that it has got two properties. We need to stuff in that so that it auto creates the date timestamp. And what's coming up is this. In the next session, what we will do is we will add get all and get by ID, because right now we are adding in much of the data into the database. Someone should be able to retrieve that, so that we will do get all and get by ID. And then what we will do is we'll add that in the proto file, and then we'll implement it as part of the gRPC server. And then what we will do is we'll set up the Redis cache, because every time what happens is you go and talk to the database, it definitely consumes seconds, maybe 2 seconds or 1 second or 500 milliseconds, whatever, but it definitely takes time. But the advantage of having that in the Redis cache is you don't need to go and talk to far database to bring in your data. You can have that in your Redis cache, which is in memory and fast. So you can go talk to the Redis cache and see if at all the content is there. You need to grab it. If not, you go it. And what type of data you need to do it is the one which we are going to discuss. And when should you invalidate the content, we'll discuss. And then we will see one without this Redis cache, how much milliseconds of time it takes. And then we'll write another method which we will go through this Redis cache and we'll mark that timestamps. So first hit, when your first time when the gRPC server is up and running, and first request when it comes, what it takes to bring in the content with Redis cache and without Redis cache. And once the gRPC server is up and running, and the connectivity has been established from the server to the database, and at that time you again note down the numbers. We'll note down with and without gRPC, without Redis cache. Okay, so that's pretty much. So I'm making note of some of the action items which we had in the previous session. So we'll include this as part of our future sessions. But so we can take some queries. Anwar?
Yeah, thank you for the session. So we have a few questions. So
Yep.
First question is, why we need to gRPs instead of .NET Web API? So we have
Okay.
.NET API. Why we need to go gRPC?
Right, that's a pretty good question. So which I think we discussed in our session 1 also, but no problem. We can discuss it again and again. So see this, everything has got its own advantage, and everything is designed for its own benefit. Let me grab this, and let me grab the Tech Talks from the session. Okay, so see this. This is what we discussed it here. So the REST, if you see that REST, it best suits for CRUD operations, web API. Okay. Now if you see SignalR, it's from the best use case is like a multicasting and web messaging. Like gRPC, you use it when you need low resource clients like an IoT, and when you want a server to server communication, and also you have the streaming, like a client streaming, server streaming, as well as bidirectional streaming, and it goes on HTTP too, and the transmission is binary. Okay, so there are multi advantages, and you have a GraphQL, which is querying the large data set, and you have webhooks. So those are some of the advantages. Like one of the classic use cases we have seen today itself in our demo. Let's assume this is one web API. Now you have one microservice, and this is another microservice. So when two microservices wants to talk to each other, you can go on HTTP client and talk. But the gRPC is much faster because one thing is secure, and other thing is you have the transmission is binary. So the number of bytes which transfers between to and fro is very less. Okay, and the third thing is, if you write a REST service, on what contract or what defines that I'm going to use this as my input and I'm going to give you something as the output, like add address request and add address response. So is there a strict contract? That contract exists in gRPC. So those are some of the things. And here is another URL which I posted this morning also. See, each has got its own advantage. Like this has got a loosely coupled. And again, the layered architecture can be there. And if you see this gRPC, we have seen this extremely low powered situation, and it is serialized, and the binary transmission, HTTP, and the server to server communication. So each will have its own advantage, and we have to decide what best suits us.
Okay, thank you. So another question. So communicate from one microservice to another microservice. Just we can do service separately already. Why need to one new service like gRPC?
I didn't understand the question. Could you please repeat it?
So we have already separate service in microservice, separate service. Okay. So why I need to create again new service with gRPC? Like can you open the chat? Maybe you understand the chat window.
It's there in this?
Yes.
Q&A chat?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Where is this question?
Last.
This guy?
Yes, the Bhupati.
Okay, Bhupati. Right. Thanks. Okay, Bhupati. Imagine. Let's assume you have microservice 1. Okay, let's talk through the PowerPoint. That might give us Control M. Okay, so let's assume this is
Can you share the?
Oh, I'm not sharing it. Oh, I'm sorry for that. I thought I'm sharing it. Okay, cool. Let me do that. Okay, this is MS1. This is microservice 1. And this is microservice 2. This is microservice 2. Okay, let's assume. Now this has been developed using REST. Let's assume this has been developed using REST web service. And this has been used in REST or something else, and might be one is in one data center, other one is in other data center. And let's assume these two companies are merging. Okay, I'm giving one of the use cases. There could be many use cases, but I'm giving one of the use cases. Now these two companies has come in. So what simple I can expose and ask them to communicate with this using the simple HTTP client. I mean, we can go to and fro on the HTTP client. So instead, what I can do is, at the time again, you have all those JSON traveling to and fro, and definitely there will be the SSL and everything. But here, what happens is the best use case is we'll expose this as an gRPC, and this acts as a gRPC server, and this will act as a gRPC client, and this will act as a gRPC client. And let's assume this is in one language, maybe Java or something, and this is in .NET, and there is another guy, a UI, who's talking to this guy. UI was talking to UI is talking to him. So in this kind of scenario, so what this guy can do, maybe in Java or Node.js, he can add a gRPC server in his existing and expose that endpoint. This guy is in Node.js and we are in .NET. And for both of us, what is the Bible? The Bible is the proto file is a Bible, which defines like what interfaces they are exposing, the API they are exposing, and what it expects and what it's going to throw. So we are having a proper contract on this one. So this UI calls in, and most of the things this guy himself, he goes and grabs it from different data stores, maybe the SQL or Cosmos or whatever the data store. This guy itself will go and bring in a lot of data, but only in this kind of scenario where I need to do an integration. Maybe this is we are coming as part of the merger, or as we are doing as part of the third-party integration, or within the company. It could be any number of scenarios. In this kind of scenario, we'll use this as a server, we use this as a client. The UI calls, there is one hop here, the second hop here, and the third hop is this one. And the code is that the transmission between one data center and another data center, maybe one microservice and another microservice, the transmission is binary. So the number of bytes which transfers over the wire between these two guys are very less. Hope that this has clarified, Bhupati. Yeah.
Yes.
And
so next question. Okay. Already Microsoft developed from other companies. Okay. So just we are going to consume that service. If one service depend on other service, in that scenario, if create GRPC service, how it sell?
Where is this question? I'm not seeing it.
Can I come? Yeah, question is there. So in Q&A.
Q&A, yeah, it's here in published.
Yes, yes.
It's in published. I'm not seeing. Let me share my screen again, Anwar.
Yeah, sure.
Which one is that?
Yes, come down. Yes, already in microservices are developed from other companies. Is there?
Okay, already microservices are developed from other company. Just we are going to consume that service. If one service depends on another service, in that scenario, if we create gRPC service, how it will help? I am not clear about this query, but I will repeat what I understood by this. See, the same whatever I answered now is this one. Let's assume you have lot of IoT devices, and that IoT device need to communicate to this gRPC. Let's assume a device which you will have it as part of your body, and every 10 seconds this device will grab your health parameters, your BP and some parameters, health parameters, and send it across. So in this kind of low powered devices, you can use it. But the microservice which has been hosted, which has been developed in gRPC, stays on the server, but the device stays on your body. So this has got a gRPC client. This guy communicates to the server. That's one of the use case. And in your use case, already microservice has been developed. A lot of microservice has been developed in different languages, in different operating systems. Fine, that is fine. If you want to communicate to two different microservices, if you want to communicate to two different services, and you want to take advantage what the gRPC brings in to the table. Okay, maybe one microservice developed in one language on one operating system. Let's assume the Node.js and on Ubuntu or Linux, and you have one microservice which you have developed in C#, .NET Core, and it's on Windows, and you want to communicate with these two. So it definitely helps. It depends upon the scenario where you're going to use. One other scenario is let's assume Bhupati, you are working in one team and Anbu is working in another team. Anbu is good in Python. He develops something in Python, one microservice, and you are good in Go language. You develop one microservice in Go. And some of the functionality which was developed by Bhupati, Anbu wants to consume. In that case, what happens is the best thing to do is use the gRPC, expose the server, give them the proto, and they develop the client. They both talk. Here, you have already developed your microservice, and when someone wants to consume and wants to take advantage of all those good features which gRPC bringing in onto the table. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So last one more question. Can you show me again Web API with gRPC? So how to call Web API controller into gRPC service?
Oh, okay, sure, definitely. Right. Okay. So this is here the same method. We have this class, helper class, which based on your URL, this will create a client and it returns it. So coming back to the controller, inside this controller, you have the dependency injection of this logger as well as the config. Okay. And when you are invoking, when the postman calls, the postman will call this endpoint. We have seen that here. I mean, in future session, we'll be using it using that Angular project, but as of today, I mean, we are building a lot of foundation and covering a lot of ground. So we are working purely from the server perspective. We'll start using the client from the 4th session onwards. So this is, we are calling this, when we call this endpoint from the postman, let's assume this is a client. The client is calling, it will come and hit this endpoint. So this endpoint is calling this client and you're calling this add professor async. So at that time, the call will come from there to here in the address book service. Okay. So that's how the hops goes on. The hop is from the client. So it's exactly what we are discussing now. The hop is from the client to the REST API, from the REST API to gRPC server. Exactly the same. I'll bring in some more visual diagrams by next session, Anwar, so that will be more. I mean, whatever we did in today's session, I will bring in one visual diagram with all those things. What is this microservice? What it made up of? The gRPC and all those icons, visual icons, so that they can picturize like how the flow is going on. Right, and we can improvise the same diagram as and when we grow old in these sessions.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Yep.
So I think
any more questions?
We have done everything. So thanks for your wonderful session. Thank you guys. Thank you all. We'll round up.
Yep. So we'll see you next Saturday with some more learning.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Thank you guys.